Are Quakers Christian? Many Quakers are Christian. Worldwide, most Quakers are Christian. I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian today because there was a place for me in the religious society of friends when I wasn't a Christian.
Are Quakers Christian? I would almost turn that question around and say, okay, tell me what a Christian is. And it goes to the heart of what I think is the magic of Quakerism, is that we don't try to define God. We let God be God, and we just experience God. And some of us, and I would include myself, feel a great connection through the experience and testimony of Jesus Christ, the way that Jesus Christ brought love into the world as a tangible and important and central piece of what it means to be a human being, is a very powerful testimony that many, many Quakers would feel absolutely at home with, who may not call themselves Christians, but they don't need to call themselves Christians.
My practice is definitely Christian, but it doesn't mean that I feel like Christianity is the only way. And it's our history as Quakers, too. George Fox would have answered yes to that question, and everybody else.
Certainly the first Quakers were Christian. Their whole life and spirituality was centered around the light within them, which they knew, they experienced as the light of Jesus, as the Christ working within them.
I would say from its beginning, Quakerism was rooted in Christianity, but it wasn't necessarily the same kind of Christianity that was surrounding it. I'd say one of the distinctives is that Quakerism tended to take external things and understand them from an internal perspective.
For me, one of the ways that a friend's perspective helps me to follow Jesus is probably best described for when I first walked into this room as a freshman at George Fox College then. I was really moved by the attentiveness to the Spirit of God. And I remember calling my mom and saying, these people believe what all these Christian churches I've been a part of have believed but not taken seriously.
Much of Christianity is what we might call cataphatic spirituality, which you can think of as a list of all the sentences that you could make that begin God is. And Quakers have lifted up, in large part, an apophatic spirituality, which you can think of as all the sentences that begin God is not. You fill in all the blanks, which is not to deny God, but to recognize that all our intellectual constructs and our language and our words are not quite it.
And this is one of the things I really love about Quakerism, is that it is so not unconventional, right? It is nonconformist. I really appreciate that element of the mystery of Quakerism.
The light is a universal light, and that's clear in Penn's original statement that the Spirit of God is in every person. That's taken primarily from the 9th verse of the 1st chapter of John's Gospel. I am sure that that light, which comes from a universal Spirit of God, is experienced by every other person.
I think that Quaker corner of the Big Ten of Christianity doesn't bring anything from outside Christianity in, but highlights and lifts up things that were in the Christian tradition always, but that have been neglected, are almost lost over the millennia. One of those things is the direct and immediate and perceptible encounter, relationship with God. That idea that God pours out God's Spirit on everybody, and that's a life-changing encounter.
I personally identify as Quaker. I do not self-identify as Christian. And the reason I don't choose that identity is because for me, the label Christian includes a very large community of people in the world, too many of whom practice a too enthusiastic form of exclusion and intolerance for me to feel okay with that. I do unite with many of the teachings of Jesus Christ. I specifically am enthusiastic about the Gospel of Thomas.
I am a Christ-centered friend, as we tend to call ourselves, or, I'm a Christian. It's fine to call me Christian. I guess my question back is, why is it important for some people that you call yourself Christian when that's a word that never crossed Jesus's lips? I think the word Christian is really a worldly term. It's really a contemporary term that has a social meaning and which can mean a lot of different things to different people.
When I first came to meeting, I called myself a post-Christian because I felt like if I really believe that everyone has their own spiritual path, then I'm not really Christian. I'm just sort of open and seeking, and that was a popular term to use within Quaker circles. But I've come full circle and really embraced that I am Christian.
The whole labeling thing of, tell me what you believe, tell me who you are, is the antithesis of my experience of Quakerism and the Quaker testimony. And if I like the fact that we don't have a creed, we have testimonies, things that we share that seem to be common experiences and ways of being as Quakers that flow from the experience of the divine, but do not define the experience of the divine. They're coming the other way. But you got to experience it, and you've got to stop trying to put God in a box. It's just a crazy thing to do. If if we were able to put God in a box, he, she, it would not be God anymore. I mean, come on, we're only human beings.
I don't think that this whole teaching that is captured in what we know of Jesus was about individual salvation and hereafter. It was about this world we live in now. And it was about what being a people of God, being a community of God, would look like in this world right now. When Jesus said, "This is what I command that you love one another," he meant now, here. How could I not take that commandment up? That is such a clear prescription for what it would mean to be living as people gathered in God's name.
I think the witness that Quakers bring the broader Christian family really is that one of the priesthood of all believers, as is spoken. That we don't operate with a hierarchy because we recognize that there's really only one boss. And that's no human agency.
I think Quakers remind the rest of Christianity that words are insufficient, that there is something beyond words, something beyond intellectual constructs that is there and this is vital about this Christ who lived 2,000 years ago and who we say we encounter today in our worship and in our silent meditation and in our relationship with the divine.
And I think that's, for me, the heart of the controversy sometimes about what do we mean? Do we mean being Christian means accepting Jesus Christ as my personal Savior so that in the hereafter I am able to sit at the feet of God? Or do we mean that accepting Jesus Christ and the teachings of Jesus Christ informs how I live my life here and now, in these times, in this culture, in this context? And for me, it's the second. It informs how I live my life here.
Thank you for watching this QuakerSpeak video. We release a new video every Thursday. We'd like to thank Friends Fiduciary for sponsoring this one. Friends Fiduciary works with Quakers across the theological spectrum to provide socially responsible investment services for over 400 Quaker organizations who rely on them for excellent returns, knowing their investments are aligned with broadly held Quaker values. They also support the sustainability of Quaker faith communities and organizations through charitable giving with individual planned gifts, gifts of real estate, and donor-advised funds. You can learn more at their website, friendsfiduciary.org, or you can look for the link below this video. Thanks again for watching, and have a great Thursday.